to the Artificially Intelligent Podcast, where a white cracker-ass hunky comedian, me, Nathan Timmel, in the flyover state of Iowa, speaks with his bestest bud, a musician in Philadelphia who happens to be an African-American person of color, Barrett Ansar Goodwin, and we have a guest today. We have a very good old friend of mine, Mr. Augustus Smith. You know him as Auggie Smith, comedian in Los Angeles. I want to jump in really quick because as we were talking off air about our history, how much of, and I'm going to put you on the spot, how much of our first meeting where we first met, how much of that do you remember? What do you remember of it? Because I remember it vividly and can tell you exactly when we became friends.
The first time we met and hung out. Well, I remember, was it Peoria?
Nope.
Wasn't Peoria?
Nope.
Was it Muller?
Nope.
Was it Skyline?
It was, and I'm surprised you don't remember this because here's the story.
I knew I'd get it.
Yes, I was the host of the show. I was getting my feet wet in the comedy world. I was the low man on the totem pole. You were the middle act. You were featuring, and then a strapping, young, handsome black man named BT was the headliner. If people don't want to look him up, he looks exactly like Donald Driver from the Packers, or his opening joke used to be that he was Billy Blank, I believe. Wasn't it the
Tybo guy?
Tybo, the fitness.
Yeah.
And so we're put up in Appleton, Wisconsin at this condo, and the two main comics get a bedroom, and then I got a sort of closet with a sheet over it as the host.
It didn't have a door.
No, it did not have a door.
They put you in a room that didn't have a door. That's what they did, because they wanted you to be hungry, man. They wanted you to work your way out of the MC role, and so they make it as bad as they possibly can for you.
You got to earn that door. That's what it is. You have to earn the door. So, I couldn't tell you what day of the week. It was probably Friday to Saturday. I don't remember exactly, but I woke up early because I slept poorly because I didn't have a door. And I'm on the couch, and BT comes in, I don't know, 8, 9 a.m. with this beautiful blonde in his hand. He's like, "What's up?" And just go straight to his bedroom. And I sat there for a second and went, all right. So I went and pounded on your door knowing that you were asleep. And you're like, "What?" I'm like, "Dude, you got two options. You can either come to breakfast with me, or you can sit and listen to BT fuck the shit out of the woman he just brought home." There was like maybe a 2-second pause, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll come to breakfast." And we went to breakfast, and we talked, and we became friends just talking over breakfast, not being in the same condo with BT as he was boning the shit out of some 20-year-old girl.
You guys are going to get him in trouble because they're going to look back at the schedule, and his wife's going to be like, "Wait a minute, we were married then. You said that. Wait a minute, you said that."
I don't think BT will ever get married. Watch, he's probably married now. I don't know. But yeah,
I think that woman became his wife. That's the way that story ends.
That's the way it should end.
It's very sweet.
But I didn't have a door, and I didn't want to listen to it. So
story.
Yeah, I figured you'd want to get out of there. So
oh, that's funny.
That was our bonding, was over breakfast, because we didn't want to be in a condo with hearing things that we were not doing.
Yes,
man. I used to work that club all the time, and I spent so much time in that condo with so many different people. I had the unfortunate experience and fortunate experience of having to follow Chad Daniels. And he had already gotten funny, but they hadn't started headlining him yet. He was featuring, and he just absolutely annihilated me every night, to the point of where the crowd like disliked me. They were mad that I wasn't him. Like, it was just that. And like after the show, they were looking at me like, "Why weren't you him?" Like that. Yeah.
I had that happen to me once, and I'm trying to think of the guy's name. It's Andy something. He's been on Fallon. Nice kid, but yeah, it was a series of one-nighters, and he was just so happy and likable. And he would get off the stage, and everybody loved him. And I'd get on the stage like, "Hey, I'm kind of angry," and they're like, "Not having it, not interested."
No, but when you're the person who does that to somebody else, do you recognize those moments?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I told you I did it a couple months ago, maybe half a year ago. A place that I'd headlined a bunch of times said, it's a casino, And the booker said, hey, they want to start going with name comics. Will you open? We'll pay you the same. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I've got no ego if you're paying me the same. And they brought in someone I'd never heard of, but apparently he'd been on a couple TV shows, and he had a fantastic LA5. He had a great LA5, but to get on a real stage and try and talk for 45 minutes, he came in after the first show shaking, visibly shaking. He's like, people were walking out during my set. They were getting up and leaving. And I felt bad for him, but at the same time, he couldn't bring it. He had 5 decent minutes that are cute for television. Mm-hmm. Nothing that you can, sustain interest in for 45 minutes.
Well, when you're, I think it's 2 different attitudes. When you're coming up and they're featuring you and you want a headline, then you're okay with just destroying the next guy. You're okay with. But as I get older, and when I'm on shows with other people now, and I'm not closing, if I'm doing really well, I'll back it off for the last couple minutes, kind of leave them like not biting the table and chanting my name. It's nice when they carry you around and such, but when somebody else has to take the stage. So yeah, I pull back a little bit now. I didn't do that back in the day. I remember one time I was working Harvey's, and I don't remember who the headliner was, but I had just gotten really funny, and they were featuring me. And I had this closing bit that was like a 5-minute closing bit that closed on a callback, and it was just a big laugh. And so the manager decided to do a blackout. Like and Harvey's used to pack out. So it'd be like 250 people packed in this place. And I'd hit this last punchline, and then he'd kill the lights, and the people just went fucking bananas. Just mass chaos of their love for me. And I can't tell you who had to follow that. But sometimes I think back, and that cannot have been an easy thing. That poor guy, whoever that.
Now you've said this twice. Once about you, and once about Chad, because we're on a first name basis. You said that he had gotten funny, and then you said same thing about yourself. You had gotten funny. You can tell not just in the audience reaction, but you can actually tell from your own material when you were not funny to when you were funny. And how did you deal with it when you knew you weren't, or did you know that you weren't funny, or just when you got funny, you realized you previously weren't funny?
For me, it's definitely the second one now.
Okay.
I remember when I started, I thought all I need is just an audience in front of me. I just need somebody to hear this because it's so important. And I look back at how bad the jokes were, and it's embarrassing. And it physically hurts when I think about the stuff that I was passing off as comedy. And then, you watch a few different people, and you watch a few different styles, and then you start to write in a way that is comfortable for you. And then you write that first really, really good long bit that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you're like, oh my God, yeah, that's what my acts have been missing, is me putting any work into it. That's what I've been missing this whole time. If I just sat down and strung some of these punchlines together in a fashion that made some sort of sense and took out all the superfluous words, I might have something here. If I looked at it like a puzzle or like a poem instead of just an emotion, because when you're starting, you don't understand, and I know this sounds silly, but you don't understand the power of each word. You don't understand how important a perfect sentence is when you first start in. You just think, I need to get to this punchline. Here's a word play that I think is interesting. There's no deeper meaning to anything. There's no poetry behind it. You don't understand the beautiful rhythm of language and how an entire act should be something you can take in as one piece of art. As one, like a 45-minute act should be something that front to back is one piece of art. And you start to realize all that stuff, and then you start to get really good at it.
And you see why I idolized him? Do you understand why? And I will say this, what I was just thinking about what you said, if there's one thing I think I did right in my comedic career, is when I fell in love with you, I did not try to emulate you. I watched you on stage and said, he does that. I like that, but that's him, not me. And I see so many comedians that go, I like that. I'm going to do that. And it just doesn't work when they find someone that they idolize. I'll pat myself on the back. I took your wisdom and your guidance and just like used it to find me. And yeah, I don't know a lot of people that do that. They try and emulate or copy.
Well, that's when you're starting and you're watching it and you really idolize some people, that it's an easy trap to fall into. I think it's almost impossible to listen to a lot of Norm Macdonald without speaking in Norm Macdonald's particular rhythm, which is his own. I mean, that's kind of the way Canadian people talk, but it's a hyper version of the way Canadian people talk, is the way that he hits his punchlines. And so I went around probably for 8 months sounding like Norm Macdonald. But I mean, it was fun to do, and it was fun to emulate. But it wasn't me. It wasn't who I am.
Did it work? Did it work when you did it?
Yeah. When I started, so I was 18 when I first went on stage. And when I first went on stage, I didn't realize you couldn't do other people's jokes that hadn't hit Billings, Montana. So I was just doing, I'd memorized Bobby Slayton's act from the Young Comedian special. And so I was doing Slayton, and I was doing like dice jokes and stuff like that because I thought those are jokes. That's what you do. I didn't know you couldn't do that.
Yeah, like a cover band. Like you learned how to be like how musicians learn how to play in cover bands. You learned, and that's what you did. That's
and thank God the internet wasn't around.
Reimagining.
If the internet had been around, you wouldn't get that forgiveness. He's just 18, he doesn't know any better. You would get fuck him, he's a thief, fuck him, he's never working this room again. Or we're so fast to jump to anger, and so we don't.
Well, then the other thing is, I see jokes on social media all the time that have been a bit in stand-up comedy for decades.
Yeah.
That they don't realize that. Like there was a joke going around on Twitter like a month ago. The great thing about dating a homeless woman is you can just drop her off anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's a 40-year-old joke in stand-up comedy. I can't tell you who wrote it. I know that I've seen it dozens of times done in one fashion or another. So, but I mean, somebody thinks they wrote it. Just like when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, I thought I wrote the "he has to move back to Bel Air" joke. Apparently, a few other people had that particular flash of brilliance.
Well, it's kind of like the Trump's going to build a wall. Oh, who's going to build it? Mexico. Like how everybody thought of that. It was ubiquitous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Had a thought, then I lost it.
Funny. So, how long were you doing comedy before you actually realized you were funny, and what changed in your life? Like, once you realized you were funny, did it change the way that you presented yourself? Like, did something about your personality change in the way that did you take yourself more seriously? Like, or did you just realize that you were now funny and then life just went and like, I'm asking the question poorly. So
it was such small goals to begin with. At first, it's just having an opportunity to get on stage. You start with that small of a goal. And so I originally moved from Montana to Chicago. Then I moved from Chicago to Portland, Oregon. And that happened within like a year. It was all very quick. So I did a little bit of comedy in Chicago, but I would say that I started in Portland. And when I started, there was one open mic, and it was on Tuesday night. And sometimes you got shut out of that open mic of your 5 minutes for the week. And you somehow had to build enough time so that somebody would hire you to feature at one-nighters. So it went from wanting to get on stage to developing enough time where I could fake a 30-minute act so I could go open at a Red Lion in Astoria. Like it was that small of a thing. And then that happens. And then if you're really lucky, you work with people that give a shit. You work with people that want to pass on the stuff that they already know. And I was very lucky that way. There was a lot of people that went out of their way to teach me things. There was a way to MC a show There is a way to do that, and you're not born knowing that. There is a way to do radio and be good at radio, and you're not born knowing that. And I was very lucky that I worked with a lot of people that showed me the right way to do these things. In the end, in comedy, you got to find your own way, and you got to figure out your own punchlines, and you got to figure out how you're going to do it. But there's simple things. Like the easiest one is decide if you're going to work with the mic in the stand or the mic out of the stand. But whatever you do, if it's going to be out of the stand, get the stand out of the way. Get it out of the way. It creates a psychological barrier between you and the crowd if you don't move the damn thing. Now, regular people don't walk around knowing that. You have to be told that before you go on stage. So that's a microcosm of a bunch of people that taught me how to do it. So when I got funny, which is a really interesting question, is did that change the way that I approached it? I think that I always thought I was better than whoever they would get to replace me. Like when I was opening, when I was featuring, I was the best feature pretty quick. And I wasn't the best headliner right away. But I always felt like, well, I'm good enough for this room. I'm better than whoever they would get in that room. And you have to have that. You have to believe you're good at it. You have to believe in the words that you're saying, because if you don't, the crowd certainly won't. So, yeah, I think it absolutely changes you. When you get good at it, it feeds on itself. The more that you believe in what you're saying, the more interesting what you're saying becomes. Yeah.
You remind me of, I'm almost positive it was a Charles Barkley quote where someone asked him about the best basketball player, and he said, it's me. And the guy's like, not Jordan? He's like, no, it's me. And he believed it, because he had to in order to get on the court. He couldn't think, oh man, fuck, I'm no Jordan. He had to believe in himself.
Yeah, he had to specifically beat Michael Jordan. And that's the thing about with comedy, I'm not specifically up against, I don't know, Bill Burr. If I was, I'd be getting my ass kicked. So I can be a fan of his also. I can say that Bill Burr is I don't have to believe myself to be better than him. But I think in sports, like if you're going up against it, you have to believe as a hitter, you're better than the pitcher. But I don't necessarily have to believe I'm better than other comics. But maybe I do. I don't know. I got to think about that one too. These are good questions, guys.
what you're making me think of is Barrett and I have talked about this. I don't know if it's belief in self versus insecurity, or one could argue reality or self-awareness. Because I met Barrett when I went to the Berklee College of Music in Boston, because I was going to be a musician. I was going to be in a band, and I was for a while. I only got into comedy after the band I was in broke up, and that's a long story. But we had a moment where I sent our shit out, and we were getting played in college radio stations. And I have somewhere in crates in this basement, like a magazine, the College Music Journal, that has us circled at number 4. Like, we should go to St. Louis. They're playing us in St. Louis. Anyway, we broke up. And I had a moment where I went, well, I can't sing. I don't really write well. I'm a good collaborator. Like, I was good in the band. I knew how to arrange. Like, we jam, and I'm like, okay, that section goes here. But I don't know that I'm a solo artist. And if I were to write songs, I would be too embarrassed to meet Peter Gabriel. Like, oh, you're a musician? I'm a musician too. Because I don't know how John Bon Jovi does it. I don't know how he meets people and goes, yeah, I'm a musician. Really? Living on a prayer? But when it comes to comedy,
how does John Bon Jovi do
it? But as a comedian, I have what you just talked about, the confidence to go, yeah, I'm not as good as Bill Burr, but I don't care. I could still talk to him and say, oh, I'm a comedian too. I don't feel the insecurity or the self-awareness of I wouldn't be the greatest musician, but I do have enough comfort in my ability as a comedian to not be embarrassed by it, if that makes sense.
Well, because you only need to be good enough for that crowd that night.
Yeah.
Each crowd you're in front of, it's, can I make this particular crowd laugh? And most of the vast majority of the time, the answer is yes. It's very rare when there's just absolutely no opportunity to entertain them. The opportunity is always there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after you make them laugh, one night at the Skyline, probably the best show I've ever seen. And I wish I could recall it better in my memory, but you went out with a whimper in a good way, where I can't even describe it. You made a real emotional connection with some of the audience, and you confused the shit out of the other portion of the audience. But you went down this just sort of free flowing frame of thought. And then we went downstairs to the restaurant. You sat on the bar and said, the thing about comedy is when the show's over, you go from being the most important person in the room to less important than the stool they sat on. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to go from on stage world to not on stage world. Yeah, on stage world is better.
Yeah.
When I was a young man, especially, because my act has changed quite a bit. My approach to it has changed quite a bit. But when I was a young man, especially, I would visualize the person that I wanted to be. And that's who I was on stage. It was like, this is the guy, just sort of an aggressive Bill Murray, I guess you would call him, is who I wanted to be on stage. And yeah, so that's who I became. That's who I slipped into every time. Because, I mean, you know, Nathan, our people are notoriously socially inept. Yep. Most comics have a hard time looking you in the eye. It's an odd thing that the people that every night have to make a connection with a group of strangers have a very hard time making connections with people one-on-one after the show, looking at them.
But it's funny because the on-stage part is easier, making that connection, because you're whoever you want to be, and then you get off stage and you're sort of exposed for who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And who wants that guy?
Yeah, no one. No one at all.
There's an old story from Canada, and it's this bar gig, and the men's bathroom is literally right next to the stage. Okay. So the headliner at this bar gig had gotten food poisoning and was extremely ill, but needed to do the gig. So he shows up at the gig, and while the feature's on stage, he goes into the bathroom because he has just like vicious diarrhea. But here's the thing. It's one of these bar bathrooms that don't have a stall around you. It's just the bare toilet in the room.
Military style.
It's right in sight line of the door. So every time a guy would completely open up the door, this dark room would become illuminated. And the entire crowd would be seeing this guy suffering from diarrhea on a toilet. And this goes on for a half an hour of just door open, light, door really slowly close on its own. Then, please welcome to the stage. It's that guy that has to go up there. Now, any illusion of you being better than them is now ruined. It's just, you are one of the muck. You can only embrace what has happened to you at that point, because you're not a star, man. You're not a star.
No, but you could judo it and become relatable. You are one of the audience now.
Yeah.
Like, I am one of you.
It's what you got to do. It's what you got to do, man. And also, you got to hurry and get off stage.
So you can get back in that bathroom.
Because you got problems.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's like there's this story of this guy in the 80s. And he was a road guy. And if people don't know, there was a comedy boom in the 80s where all of a sudden there was clubs all over the place. And they were paying just ridiculous amounts of money. Like no-name guys were getting $5,000, 1988, $5,000 for the weekend for doing shows. So there's this guy going around doing really well. And he's selling a T-shirt. And the T-shirt has a picture of him on stage and then a line from his act and then his name. Okay. So things go south, and the guy has to take a regular job at an Applebee's, and he goes over to the table to take the table's order, and there's a woman sitting there wearing the shirt that had his picture and his name just across the. At some point, he had sold this to her and signed it, and now he is serving her. I'm telling you. That's why I don't sell T-shirts, man.
It's funny because I was just talking to a friend of mine. We were talking about how musicians don't like having past success is it's like stocks. Like past performance is no indication of future performance. Isn't that what they say or something? And
Yeah.
it's true, right? Like my friends always joke, like you go and you play Letterman back when there was a Letterman. You play Letterman and then you get on the subway and go back to your little apartment in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, right. And you'll find guys who, like people who have done these huge gigs and toured with super famous people, and you'll bump into them on a wedding gig. And they'll be like, right. And it's like, and particularly as they get older, do you know what I mean? And I wonder, what do comics do to future proof their lives as much as you can? I know that you can't, but like as much as you can, do you guys ever think about that?
We marry up.
Yeah. 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 That's you use your funny to get a good wife. That's what it is.
You
No,
make me think of I think of it, can't think of his name, but he was in the news right before the pandemic. Someone from the Cosby Show, wasn't it, that was discovered working at a Trader Joe's, and a few people made fun of him, and then everybody else said, make fun, fuck you, acting is tough. And he said, yeah, I got a gig where I could. I'm bagging groceries. What are you going to do? You remember that story?
Oh yeah, and
Ooh.
now that guy has been in a bunch of stuff. He got a regular role on this show, The Good Fight, that I watch, and I see him in other stuff now.
Yeah, Tyler Perry contacted him immediately.
That people were demeaning his actual work. The same people that say Hollywood sucks and screw them, then they see that same guy doing an actual job. Well, screw him for doing that actual job. No, yeah, and out of all the people on the Cosby Show, he's doing the best. I mean, there are people that were on that show not doing as well these days, getting worse press than him.
This is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Man, you look like you're about to say something, Nate.
Well, I'm enjoying where we're going. I wonder if we want to talk about the past 2 weeks have had the comedy of all things has been in the news, which is a rarity.
Yeah.
Not always for the best reasons. And it's funny because
never for the best reasons. Nathan,
yes.
When are we going to hear a story about a male comic that saves a busload of orphans instead of all the other stuff? And that's why I was excited. And I know I shouldn't say this, but I'm kind of excited about the Ukraine thing. It's finally positive press for a male comedian.
Oh, yeah.
Finally, we are doing something that matters in this world. And that I kind of dig about it. But it's just, it was one horrible story. And I hear it now all the time of like how male comedians are assholes and predators. And it's kind of hard to argue against it. Yes, it's true that most of the people that I love in my life are comedians, and that most of the people that have been there at the important times in my life and I'm closest with are all comedians. But I guess a lot of us are also absolute monsters. And who knew that? Who knew that going in? And that's only people only want to talk about the monsters. I was the first guy to wear a bowling shirt on stage. Where's my documentary?
Well, you should have been the first guy to take it off on stage, and then you'd be playing theaters.
Yes. Now you're talking.
Blank on his name. Fuck.
Bert Kreischer.
Yes, thank you. I was right there, but I couldn't pull it out. But well, let's talk about them in order. Even though one was huge and then fell off the face of the earth, like that's just the news cycle. Oh my God, Will Smith hit him, and then 3 days later, it's pretty much gone. But Barrett and I talked about it last week from just the performer point of view, the black male point of view, what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote. I asked Barrett if he had any relation to that. And what about you? I mean, I had the comedian point of view is, holy shit, that's going to be in the back of my head when I'm on stage now. I've never been rushed, but I've been threatened. There are always hecklers, but now that microphone stand that you have to pull out of the way, am I just going to keep it on hand because there's that big metal solid base that I have to like quick whip up?
You tilt it back and you Braveheart him. They're
Yeah.
coming at you, and you just give them the pointy end. And,
You hit them with that metal end, they're going down. But is that going to be in the back of your head, or do you think, or and maybe it's in the back of my head now, but in 2 weeks, like I was on the stage Saturday, didn't cross my mind once. Like I sort of had a thought before I went up, like, ooh, what if? And then I told a joke, everybody laughed, and it was just like maybe the next day I went, oh, I didn't even think about it at all while I was on stage. Like I worried I would, and then I didn't.
Well, I've had a couple of different incidents. There was one night in Boise where a guy rushed the stage, and the door guys, they were ready, and they got in the way, and they got him out of there. But what was funny is they had, along with their regular sign, they had one of those tent signs outside that sit on the sidewalk. He attacked that sign, and he punched a hole in it where my name was.
Nice.
So I have this great picture of my face through the hole in the sign that he punched through.
So what built to that? I mean, obviously it wasn't he just rushed the stage. Was it a build? Did you sense it was coming? Did you egg him on? Did you back it off?
The thing is that I don't even blame this guy. So I used to close on a bit, and the idea of the bit was that all these comics are saying the worst possible thing now, and they're getting very famous for it. And so I'm going to say the worst possible thing now. And so I did, in order to lampoon a comedian doing a rape joke, you are forced to do a rape joke, even if you are satirizing how stupid it is to do a rape joke. That is the way that I attack things. I attack them satirically. So even though I set it up of like, sorry guys, I got to do this. And then I've had a couple of different dumb, quick rape jokes that I've written for that particular occasion. Well, of course, anytime you're in front of a crowd, you have to assume that about a third of the women in your crowd and about a fifth of the men have been sexually abused in their life. You just have to assume that, because those are pretty close to the actual numbers. And so I know that when I talk about how stupid it is to bring up people's darkest memory, I am in doing that, bringing up their darkest memory. So this guy, in protecting his woman, rushed the stage as though I was making fun of her pain, even though I never directed anything specifically at her. So here's the thing. I get it, man. I get it. If my wife, I knew, was going to be really upset by something, and I felt I needed to stand up for her, that isn't the way that I would do it. But I'm not mad at the guy. I understand it. But that is a completely separate incident than the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing. And here's the deal, is most of the stuff that I think about it has been articulated by others, and they've done a better job than me. So I'm going to pick one part that nobody has brought up. Okay. Losing your hair is not a debilitating fucking disease. It's a thing that happens. A bunch of people lose their hair. Most old guys lose their hair. Some young guys lose their hair. Old women lose their hair. Young women lose their hair. Children lose their hair because they're going through chemo treatments. All kinds of people lose their hair because they get sick, because they get radiated, because that's just the way life is. They lose their goddamn hair. And I'm not going to tell any of those people that it's a traumatic fucking thing, because it's not. It's not. It's nothing. It is just a statement of being. Some people have hair. Some people don't have fucking hair. Okay. We cannot make it into this. Oh, well, she has this medical condition where no, a bunch of people lose their fucking hair, and she's one of those fucking people. And I hate that we make it okay. We make it okay. Well, he shouldn't have hit him, but he shouldn't have made that joke. Yeah. It's like an abusive husband. He shouldn't have hit his wife, but she shouldn't have burned the chili mac. I mean, they're both equally at fault, aren't they? Isn't that what we're talking about? So
that's what I said in my inarticulate statement, which was the instant you condone violence against another person because you didn't agree with something they said, well, someone else out there will condone violence against you because they're not going to like something you said. It just becomes a round robin of justification.
You can't respond to words with violence. You just can't. Yeah. I got 3 goddamn kids that I'm trying to raise in this world, and you cannot meet words with violence, because then the next guy, he meets your slap with his knife, and then you meet his knife with your gun, and that's the way things work in life. And it's this bullshit escalation. If you want to yell back, hey, asshole, that wasn't a cool thing to say. Fine. If you want to come back at him, what's up? Fine. But you don't get to escalate it. You don't get to meet words with violence. You just don't. And it's just, the reason I think that most of us went so crazy with this is because we saw the defenses of it. We saw all these people defending it and equating words to violence. Yeah. And it's just so stupid, you can't even argue it anymore. Because it's just like, no, what they did is not at all the same. Just the statement of they both did something wrong takes away from how wrong what he did was. And it just, it bothers me so much. But I don't think that it's like all these people say, well, comics are scared that they're going to. It's not just comics, it's any live performer. It's anybody that's making a statement that somebody in the crowd doesn't agree with. Now it normalizes that you can hit that person. And I mean, that's going to go for anybody performing in front of people, musicians, it doesn't matter what it is. If you say something, then that normalizes it. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem.
I mean, that's interesting. I'll say, I can imagine that as a woman, again, I'm not a woman, but I can imagine that losing your hair, it isn't traumatic, but I know particularly, I don't want to say particularly in the Black community, because almost every group of women I know loves their hair. I can imagine that losing your hair as a woman, as much as it's not a debilitating thing, like there's way, way, way worse things that could happen to you in the scale of things. It's almost insignificant. So I get your point. I also can imagine that as much as they get to that place of serenity where you are, it might not be a quick and easy journey. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh, yeah.
It might, and having to be with the person as they go through that thing. Do you know what I mean? And then to have somebody call attention to it. I feel like my issue is ultimately two things. One, that I feel like that wasn't what he was really mad at. I think he was just mad that he felt like his manhood was challenged, and it was much less about his wife as it was about his wife. You know what I mean? And so I get where the feminists are like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like, that was unnecessary. I get that. But I also think it was really interesting that, like, very little attention has been paid to the fact that Chris Rock is handling this like a champ. Like, the man got open hand smacked in front of arguably the world. You want to talk about some emasculating shit? That's like your wife going on her own talk show and talking about how she fucked your son's friends.
Okay, so I have two thoughts, and one goes back a minute where I was going to say, and I didn't want to interrupt you, that her coming to terms with her head, is that why she went out and fucked the guy half her age? To feel good about it. That was my thought there.
You're an ass.
As far as Chris Rock goes, I think that will be the difference between short term and long term. Whereas Will Smith gets all the attention right now, and negatively so, and deservedly so. But I think over time, when you look back and reflect, it'll be like, oh, and by the way, Chris Rock really handled himself well. You're seeing it out there, not talked about as much, but I think that will be the long-term story, is how well Chris handled it. And so you're right, it's not the big story right now, but I think over time he will absolutely be shown in a extremely positive light.
I think so too.
Yeah, because, and other people have pointed this out, but I'll reiterate it, that Chris Rock, the comedian, could have absolutely destroyed Will Smith right then.
Oh, you saw him bite his tongue. You saw him go.
And he stopped himself, and because he's one of the best of all time at that, and would have absolutely annihilated the man.
But not just that. My buddy Jake, comedian, he pointed out something that I have not heard anyone else say. No one has said this, and if they have, I missed it. Chris didn't just go up there blank and start riffing. they write for a couple of weeks before this. Okay, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? And they write all the Jada has all the dicks in her mouth jokes, and then they laugh, and then they shove them aside and say, can't do that on air. But he knows them all. I mean, they wrote them and dismissed them because they're not going to do them on the Oscars. But he had every one of those, how many guys has your wife fucked jokes in his head that all his writers gave him that they laughed about and that he didn't use. That he in that moment when he went, that's what he was thinking is all the jokes they wrote.
I know.
Hey, he did do one thing that I saw pointed out that I guess was kind of a dick move. He was giving out the award to Questlove, but Questlove didn't produce that movie alone. He had 3 partners in it. And so if you listen, Chris Rock says, all right, the winner is Summer of Soul by Antoine Questlove, whatever his last name is. I'm sorry, I don't know it. And 4 white guys is what he said.
No, and one of the guys is not white. And
exactly. And there's 3 of them. And one of them isn't even white. And apparently he'd made the same joke the night before at whatever event it was. Now, here's the thing. I give Chris Rock a pass on that because he had just been hit in the face. And he's trying not to cry and his head is spinning. He was just hit by Muhammad Ali, for Christ's sake. So, yeah, I forgive him anything he says in that moment. But I understand because I read the tweets from the guy.
So did I.
Actually, I think he was Indian. I could be wrong about that.
He was pissed. That's all I remember. He was not very forgiving from what I read.
Yeah, no, he was pissed. Yeah, he was pissed. He was like, what a dick. So there's other people mad at Chris Rock about other stuff too. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. This goes back in the conversation 10 minutes, but it did pop into my head and it's still swimming around in there. So I do want to get it out. It ties in with losing your hair not being as big a deal as other trauma versus what you were talking about, that closer where the guy rushed your stage. I was featuring for a comic, or was I the headliner? I don't remember. All I know is that he had a rape joke in his set, and the first night I saw it, I actively winced. I was like, ooh, like it wasn't. I've heard rape jokes that I thought were funny. Like Nick DiPaolo had one of my favorites where he said, oh, I saw a 300-pound woman wearing a rape whistle. I'm like, wow, that's really positive thinking. Maybe you should carry 2, one for you, one for your rapist. So the guy can like, burp, burp, I can't believe I'm doing this. Someone help me. I got someone stop me. Look at her. It was
good Lord.
Not my joke, Nick DiPaolo's. And I'm probably paraphrasing. I'm sure he told
his act now, Barrett. You should see DiPaolo's act now.
Woo! So either way, this guy tells the joke, and I just went, wow, I would not do that on stage. So Saturday rolls around, first show, and there's a bachelorette party in the audience. And at some point, everybody gets up and runs to the bachelorette and like just congregates around her. And I just sort of look and tears are running down her face. And like you said, she had been raped. And the way he was telling the joke brought it up and they were getting her out of there. And I approached them like, hey, is everything okay? And they were super gentle. They weren't like, fuck you, fuck all comedians, but they were definitely not happy. And I remember thinking like, don't be that guy. I mean, everyone is offended by something and you can talk about, I'm not saying don't, just talk about what you're comfortable with. And like you said, you can talk about it in the most benign of ways or give all the trigger warnings up front, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I don't, and people, but the way he did it is he just jumped in both feet, like, here we go. This, what, and yeah. And I said, don't be that guy, as much as you can. What's that?
In the end, Nathan, at one point, I think we understand as comedians that we are entertainers.
Yeah.
That is the first thing that we are. We're not social commentators. I mean, that can be part of it. That can definitely be a good part of it. But your job is to entertain. It's not to change their worldview. It's not to have them dig up the past and deal with it, man. No. You want to have buried memories when you're at my show? You keep them buried, baby. You don't want to deal with your past? You don't have to deal with nothing. Right, you just sit back and relax and enjoy. Yeah,
people come there to escape their day, and then all you do is remind them of the worst shit that ever happened.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's fucking terrible.
Well, for a while, and I've done this a couple times, but radio is becoming less and less prevalent. But a couple of years ago, I was doing radio and they would ask, so what's your act like? And on a whim, I did not have this pre-planned because I've never been able to answer that question. I just start to like, well, I tell stories about my family and I'm funny, like I've never been able to. Several years ago, I got asked that question and I just vomited out, not politics. Come see me tonight. I don't care who you support, who you're voting for. Just come and laugh and we won't talk politics or tribalism. And the DJ was like, I like this guy. And I'm like, that is a good goddamn answer. I'm going to use that for a while where I will be on stage and not saying fuck Trump or fuck Biden or whatever. And it worked. And people really enjoyed the fact that I let them know up front, just come out, we're going to laugh. I'm not going to shit on your guy.
What you'll say is fuck Brandon.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They'll never know. They'll never know. It's so clever.
It's sneaky.
That's why we as liberals hate it so much. That's why it gets under our skin and it haunts our dreams because we just can't handle how clever it is.
No. Barrett's a right-wing Trump supporter. So when you say,
oh, good for you.
I am, man. I miss that guy.
No, one thing Barrett and I end up talking about a lot is how much we hate liberals. We hate conservatives, but we're starting to hate liberals more and more. We're getting older and more conservative, but then we look at the right and say, well, I'm not like those assholes. But then we look at the far left and we're like, well, I'm not like we're finding ourselves politically homeless more and more, where it's the fringes are yelling at one another, and I don't want anything to do with either side of them.
Yeah. Who is our leader? Who are we supposed to idolize? Who are we looking up to? Who are we trying to emulate in this world? I don't know.
Conor Lamb. I like him, and nobody listens to him. He's a representative in Pennsylvania, and he and AOC got into it a while ago. She said, Conor Lamb something, and he went, I am showing you how to be Democrat and get elected in Trump country, and you're trying to scream about transgender rights. I'm not against transgender people, but it should not be the platform. And I live in Iowa, as people may know from the beginning. The Iowa Democrats' Twitter here, all it tweets about is far left wedge issues. And sometimes I reply and like, oh yeah, that's going to win the election. Maybe talk about inflation or the economy. It's like they're actively trying to lose by only pushing far left ideology, which no one in Iowa is interested in.
Why isn't our guy out there saying this is the greatest economy of all time?
He's doing so on Twitter. Nobody's listening. He just tweeted about how there are more trucking jobs today than there were 5 years ago. He gave a number of how many truckers are on the road. Do you know who fucking hates him? Truckers, 18-wheelers. It's like, he cannot win. He cannot win. It's insane. He's doing so much good, and yet inflation is fucking. I don't even want to get into it because I get frustrated because, of course,
literally more jobs created than any other year was his first year. And since then, we've had more jobs created than any other president at this point. Our unemployment is 3.6%, record high stock market. And none of those things are ever attributed to him, ever.
The gas prices.
The inflation and the gas, that's all him. None of the good stuff is him. All of the bad stuff.
But let me ask you.
And wait, Barrett, I just got to, because my favorite thing is gas is a perfect representative of the free market economy. That who loves that? Oh, right, Republicans. I mean,
and oil companies are going to make record profits this year. So don't tell me he doesn't love oil, because they're doing better than they've ever done. So it would seem he loves them.
What were you going to say, Barrett? I apologize.
That's funny. I wonder. Because with the Republicans, there's always unity of message.
Mm-hmm.
But there's unity of message because there's an underlying thread that holds them all together. I would argue that thread's racism, but that's probably just because I'm a hammer and everything looks like a nail, right? But I wonder if the Democrats are trying the same thing, but we don't actually have that underlying thread. We have an underlying lie of like a pretend morality that we pretend to care about certain things, right? But in reality, I don't know that we have an actual thread.
I've never heard Democrats have a unified message ever.
Right. But I mean, but maybe that's what they're trying to do now, right? With the wedge issues, they're trying to make the wedge issues the issues. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there as an idea because I have always noticed that the Republicans, or at least the conservative side, they have unity of message because there is a core of something that they all seem to believe. And I don't know that as liberals we have a core that we all cling to.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
wonder
well,
if there is one, if there
especially
could be one, you know?
especially old school liberals like myself, and that's the way that I describe my politics.
Hmm.
Is that the whole idea of it is that it's supposed to shift. Like I view things differently as I get older, as I take in different information. So I'm not going to look at things one way. I can't tell you that when I was a young man, I thought of trans people the same way I think of trans people now. They were a punchline to me for a long time. And then one day they became a real thing, people I was interacting with. And then one day I understood it's like, oh, wow, okay. There's some people that in their heads, they have the wrong body. And so they do something about that, which is fine by me. And I think about, God, how many jokes did we do that had a disparaging name for trans people in the joke? How many jokes did I do that had a disparaging name for gay people? There was when I was a young man, George Carlin had used the N-word on stage, and in order to be God, all you have to do is do as God does. So I thought I was one of the cool guys that could develop the bit where I could use the N-word. And up until like 2004, I had one bit that was strangely enough a CD sales bit that used it. Would I do that today? Hell no. No, because that goes past entertainment and it goes into purposely trying to make people feel bad, purposely trying to trigger them with this absolute bomb of a word. And
Hmm.
because when I was a young man, the way that I looked at it is that I thought words were just clay. They didn't have a meaning until I gave them a meaning. In the context of my act, I could take those words and I could make those words mean whatever I wanted them to mean
Hmm.
because they didn't have a history. They didn't have a history until I gave them a history. And I completely disregarded what words might mean to the people that I'm speaking to
Hmm.
because the way that I'm going to say it, it's going to make it fine. I'm the entertainer here. You just need to trust me. And now I look at that and I wouldn't say that I'm sorry that I did it, but I wouldn't do it again.
Hmm.
Not because of the reaction or not because of what would happen to me, but just because I don't view it as the right thing to do anymore. And I don't know that there's a word in the English language for that, where I wouldn't do it again, but I'm not sorry about it. I don't know
Hmm.
what that is, but that's the way that I feel about it.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I have when comedians they come up and I have several dozen bits like that, and the thing is, a couple of them that are on albums, if I revisit it or I go, well, here's the thing. I agree with everything you just said. And the other part of it is, it's not just me. The audience was laughing. So it was society. It's where we all were. Does that make us all bad people? No, we are supposed to grow and change and progress as we grow older. And I feel the same. Would I do some of those old jokes? No. Am I sorry? No. When I said them, did they make people laugh, or was it just me on stage trying to be shocking? No, I was trying to elicit laughter and it worked. It's just a bellwether of where society was at that time.
hmm
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting thing because, like, I feel like I was having a conversation with someone. We are talking about country music, and there was a black person I was talking to. And we are talking about how sometimes you can really like the song, you know, but then they'll say something in the song that's clearly just like a white signifier, right? Like that's just what it is. It's just like this is about white culture, right? And in those moments, if the thing they're talking about has a negative association to black culture, it throws me out of the experience of enjoying the song, you know? And that's how I feel when I'm at a comedy show and somebody does something. It's not like the rape thing, but what it does is it, like, when somebody uses the N word, it's so funny to say that, like that sentence, but
I had muted myself because my fucking sump pump. I was just trying not to interrupt, but you are black. You're allowed to say it. You
Well,
have a
I can
pass.
say it, right? um, but I, but it's one of
You've
those
said it on
things,
this
man.
podcast before.
I have, nigga. What? I don't ever say that word. No. But it's actually an interesting thing. Like, I wonder if in 2004, I heard your act and I liked it up until you said that word. How
Right.
would that affect me? Because part of me, it's funny that you use the words you use to describe it, because I think I believe the same thing, even though as the receiver of it, I adamantly disagree. But as the guy on the soapbox, I absolutely agree that I can shape these words. I can make them
Mhm.
mean what I want them to mean, and that's not what I meant when I said it. So you shouldn't take it that way. That's your shit that makes me take it. That makes you take it that way. Not me for saying it. You for being, you know. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh right, like maybe that's like, I don't believe that now, but I didn't actually realize that I used to think that a lot until you
Mhm.
just said it. It's like, but it's like, right, we are our brother's keeper to a degree. Like, we do have, like, I feel like there's something when I deal with young people, um, where any kind of responsibility they have to take towards another person feels like a burden, even though there's all this talking about like fighting the good fight. I argue this with people all the time. Like, if you really want to go do something good for X group, then go actually to where those people are and do something good for them. Don't just sit here flapping your gums about how they're being mistreated. They're aware of that. Go do something that is actually good for them, you know? But I feel like the idea of having to watch what I say because I could offend someone, I think that's actually okay, right? Like, I think that that's a reasonable place to be within reason. The question is who decides where the line is. Because what you say is partially true, right? Like, is it up to us to decide where the line is, where we go from our own self expression to where our self expression could actually be harmful to someone else? How do you actually police that line? Do you know what I mean? Because you can choose not to say the N word or disparaging words about gay people and trans people or make rape jokes, right? You can do all that. But what about when you're just like, how do you act? Like, where do you draw the line? Is the line just drawn at the obvious? Don't call women cunts. Is that like, like, don't do that.
Unless
You know
they
what I mean?
are.
Right.
That's the line. They have to prove themselves to be that before you can say it.
Well,
No.
I think there are two things quick. One is we all decide for ourselves and use our best judgment. And some people have better judgment than other. And when it comes to being on stage, everybody's going to, just like I said, everybody's offended by something. Everybody's going to respond to something different. And
Yes.
so if you're a white guy on stage, like a lot of people did not like Andrew Dice Clay, he still sold out arenas. I mean,
Right.
it's your own best judgment, what you are comfortable saying. And some people are more thoughtful than others. And then the other thing goes back to what we were saying 5 minutes ago when it comes to shaping words and presenting and saying something like, Barrett, you said that you might not have liked where you shifted. This gets into the final thing we can talk about and wrap it up. Louis C.K. winning the Grammy and the idea of separating the artist from their art. And that goes to Roman Polanski. Chinatown's a great movie. He's still a rapist. So what are your thoughts there? The idea, is it on you to separate the artist from the art, or is it on the artist to be, I don't know, I don't want to say benign, but that's the word that popped into my head. Augie, got
Mm.
thoughts?
Well, I think that with stand-up comedy, it's very hard to separate the artist from the art because most stand-up comedy is so intensely personal. You can watch.
I would qualify that by saying, I think personally, most good stand-up comedy is that way. I find the most interesting stand-up comedy to me is where I learn something about the person and less about airline food, but that's just me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So but here's what it is with CK, because I think that he is a very specific instance, not just because of what he did, but because of who he targeted. Now, I have a very sort of lizard brain mentality about certain things. And one is that I believe that the males in the species have certain responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to protect our women. And I realize that doesn't sound exactly right to people. I get that. I'm just telling you that this is the way that I view life right now. And I think that we do a shitty job of it. We do a terrible job protecting women, as we spend more time harassing and assaulting them than we do protecting them by a long shot. And here's the thing. There are 4 billion women in the world, and I can't protect them all. But I can protect my wife, I can protect my kids, and I can protect my coworkers. I can protect the women that I work with, the people that I have called my friends, the people that I have shared the most intimate details of my life with. These are the people that I'm supposed to care about most, and they're the people that I am supposed to protect. Okay, and I've done a shitty job of it. Throughout my career in comedy, women have been treated terribly. They've been treated terribly, and I can't do anything about it. Because I'm not big enough to do anything about it. That's what it is. If I had gotten more famous, I could actually have an effect on this business and possibly change some things. But here's what I can do, is I can recognize the guys that are doing the bad things. My thoughts on what Louis C.K. did are pretty complicated, but the simplest version of it is that he did bad things. I've talked to guys that don't think he did anything wrong. And I'm just telling you, if you think that, you're wrong. You're messed up. There's something wrong in the wiring in your head. Okay. He did do things wrong. He did do things wrong. And well, what's he's not supposed to go on stage ever again? And I can't make that decision. I don't decide whether it ever works again. Here's what I decide. I've made a decision that I'm not going to take in any of his art. I'm not going to work with him where I had ever be offered that, even though I believe him to be maybe the third best comic of all time. I think he's an amazing comic, and I'm sure that his last special was fantastic, but I will never see it, because if I did, that would be just spitting on these women that I claim to have relationships with, that I claim to care about, and that I claim to protect. And I wouldn't be achieving that. So I'm not going to take his stuff in. I'm not going to work with him. And here's the thing. I have great friends that open for him. I have great friends that book him. And do I think less of them? No, because the world's complicated and everybody has a different view of the way things go. I just couldn't do it. So that's my view on that.
And at the end of the day, your code is your code. You know what I mean? Like that just shows to your kind of character. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not imposing your code of conduct on other people, nor are you judging them for it, but you hold yourself to this standard and you judge yourself singly. Like, if I start consuming this person's art, that would be like an affront to the women I claim to be friends with and claim to care about. So I'm not doing it. But I understand that if you do it, that doesn't mean you don't love the women in your life. That's just what it means for me if I do it. And you're not putting that on other people to be their responsibility, which is interesting. I mean, partially because I think you might have inside information. Like, you might know more about the Louis story than regular people know, or maybe have a different perspective. I don't actually know what happened. I know what I heard, and I was like, that just sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
and why didn't somebody, like, not even like, it's more like, why did not like why did people tolerate that? Like, how did it? Because I think somebody had told me that like his manager would call people up and threaten them and stuff if they were gonna say something, and I'm like, well,
Well, see, to me, that's almost,
that's
and
a
I,
different line, man.
yeah, I
Like,
was going to say, I don't know. I could be wrong. To me, that's almost worse than the act itself, because not only are you doing something horrible, but then you're going to punish them if they try and seek justice or even, and
right,
so
right,
that's,
And his manager is a guy named Dave Becky, and Dave Becky is very powerful. And Dave Becky is one of the gatekeepers, and so he does have that power to do that. And he
yeah,
absolutely did threaten that. And then the argument gets made, well, Louis didn't know about that. Okay, fine. Louis didn't know about that. He knows about it now. He knows about it now. And that's the thing, is like, so what should the penance be? And I'm telling you right now, I can't answer that question. I don't know what the penance is. I just know that there are certain things, like, God, I don't want to get way too off on another topic, but I think it ties in a little bit. When Black Lives Matter happened, the wife and I and the kids, we went and marched. And so then they would say, well, why are you marching? And I can say that the reason that we're marching is because people of color are treated differently by law enforcement than white people in America. And there's a group of people that refuse to realize that. What we have to start with is by just making that statement and saying that truth. Now, can we fix that truth? I honestly don't know. I don't know specifically what we need to do to fix that, but we do just need to be able to say it, that this is a true thing that goes on.
mm-hmm.
With Louis, I just want people to realize he did bad things. That was
Right,
predatory behavior. That isn't the way you can treat not just women, but your coworkers, for Christ's sake. If he
right,
had done that at a restaurant, the restaurant wouldn't hire him back ever. And other restaurants wouldn't hire him to work there because they would have heard about that. Now, is that the same thing as stand-up comedy? No, it's not. But why not? Why
no,
isn't it?
but I mean,
What?
that's a certain kind of privilege and I think that that's exactly what the women were talking about. I think that was the argument. I followed it, but I wasn't deep into the details of it. But I believe the argument was like, right, well, what do you do when the guy you want to work with, who has all this power and manager has all this power, does something
Yep.
that isn't appropriate? What do you do with that if you know that by complaining you won't work anymore? Like, that
Yeah.
is a certain kind of power that puts one in a position where you have to choose, right? Like, if somebody tells you you have to choose between your art and your dignity, you know what I mean? Or like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, these are tough calls. Not
And
even your
how
art
long
and
do
your
you
dignity, your
accept that?
livelihood and your art, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's weird.
And we've accepted that for years, that, like, well, of course a young actress would have sex with a producer to get a role, and then somebody like Harvey Weinstein comes around, and we realize, yeah, I guess some of those women did agree to have sex with him, but it was under not all of them, obviously, and that's why he's in prison. But can they really agree to that when he has that much power? Can they really, when they thought they were going to a business meeting and all of a sudden they're in a hotel room and he's naked? I mean, can you say that they agreed to that? All this stuff that we just sort of, well, powerful men take advantage of young women, and we were like, yeah, but that isn't the way it's supposed to be. It has
Mhm.
been that way for a long time, but it's not supposed to be that way. And maybe
Right.
now we're finally realizing that it's not supposed to be that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny though, because I think that I don't want to say that's a uniquely American thing, but I remember years ago I was doing some yoga training, and the guru ended up sleeping with some of the women, and it became a big scandal. And
I'm surprised,
somebody,
because I would fully expect that from yoga gurus.
right,
Yeah.
but like, what was, yes. That's why I was there.
Wait, here's the beacon guy.
Was
Was
it?
you talking about the guy?
No, but I think this was a common among gurus, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that one of the Indian women said is, this is such an American thing. Like, and I wonder if that's true. Like in India, the women weren't all trying to sleep. There wasn't that. There was a sense of reverence, but it wasn't, according to her, it wasn't expressed sexually. This idea that, of course, women want to sleep with powerful men, and of course, they will trade their body for these services, and of course, these men will take their bodies in exchange for this service. And, and she's like, that's such an American thing, this whole sex as currency, sex as all this stuff. And I was like, I wonder if that's true. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that Indian women aren't, that the gurus aren't doing it to, like, I have no idea. But I do know that in this country, we have intertwined sex and shame and power and manipulation, and they're all intertwined. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's very little purity in sex these days, right? Like, it's all intertwined with all this other stuff that I wonder in other countries if they actually don't do that the same way that we do. Like, I would wonder,
No going down this path. We're going to wrap it up because I believe it absolutely ties to religion. I believe that everything we have to do with sex and the shame and the anger, power.
Can you wrap this up in a minute and a half, Nathan? Just your religion.
No, that's it. Just religion. That's where I'm ending it. Is Auggie promotes something. AuggieSmith.com. Is that a website or is it Auggie Smith Comedy?
Yeah, it's a website. I got some upcoming dates. I'm doing a CD in Omaha next weekend. I'm doing a dry bar, so I don't know how long it takes for those things to come out.
Wait. Next weekend?
This weekend I'm in Tucson. The weekend after that, and I'm in Omaha, and I'm doing.
I think I'm in Omaha on Friday at a different thing. Yeah, at a little shit sort of. So all right, I'll text you if that turns out to be the truth.
Yeah, come on by.
All right. Barrett Antar Goodwin is at antargoodwin.com. He's the musical director for the Katie Henry Band. The album On My Way is out now, and dates coming up for the summer.
Yeah, we got some things. We're playing DSO, the DSO Jubilee, which is a big festival. We're doing Bayville Blues Festival is supposed to be a big one. We're doing a Prairie Dog. We have a handful of pretty big festivals this summer. It's exciting. I'm excited. You know what I mean? It's going to be a good time.
There you go. If I didn't say it, katiehenrymusic.com. That goes with the. Yes. And then I'm at nathantimmel.com, and the book is still out, still doing well. We Are 100, good reviews and comedy, and got the TikTok thing if you like watching me 1 minute funnies every day, one video a day. So there you go. Og, thanks for joining us. So goddamn good to see your face. Hopefully I'll see you in Omaha next week.
Nice to meet you, Barrett. And
man.
The next week, man. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, good stuff.